gearing up for a recording session coming up. So I'm going to replace the heads. I've got a few weeks before the session, so I'll have enough time to break them in, get them tuned up just the way I want them. So I'm actually going to replace my Evans Level 360s with some Remo Ambassadors. So I just want to kind of show you my process on some of this stuff, especially for people who haven't changed heads much. There's a couple of things I like to do when I change the heads. So here it goes. I've got a nice electric driver, which makes it pretty quick to get the heads off. Alright, so I got the rim off here. I'm going to just hang it on the hi-hat here, which works pretty well to help keep the lugs on. Okay, pop this head off. This one's still in decent shape. It's got a little bit of scuffs on it, but I'll hold on to it for something else. Okay, one of the things I like to do when I take a head off is go ahead and go through all the screws inside. Make sure things are tight, nothing's rattling loose or broken or anything like that. If your drum is good, you shouldn't have any problems with that. And this is my third one I've done today, and the screws are generally pretty tight. But just keep in mind that drums take a lot of abuse and a lot of vibration is happening inside constantly. So there is a chance that things can loosen up. If they're built well, and the screws are put in well, you shouldn't have an issue. They might use thread locker, they use good washers, occasionally lock washers. Some people actually use grease on the screws so that they can torque them a little bit tighter without causing problems, and that keeps them from vibrating loose. So in addition to all of the lugs that you have things like the feet for this drum. On the snare drum, you might have the internal snare hardware, the throw off and things like that. You want to make sure all of those are tight as well. Most things you can do with a Phillips screwdriver like this, but occasionally you'll get a drum that has some additional hardware. You might need a wrench. It's best if you can get the wrench that is sized to fit it, but if not, you can use a crescent wrench, an adjustable wrench. That should get most things tight. Okay, got those all tightened up. You want things tight and snug, but be careful not to over tighten them. You don't want to strip anything out. The hardware is pretty small. The next thing I do is just take a dust cloth and just make sure you kind of wipe down the dust and things that accumulates inside. Most drums have ventilation holes, and they can collect a little bit of dust. So I'll also carefully wipe down the edge here. Make sure you don't put any pressure or hardware other than what's intended on the bearing edge. You don't want any nicks in that. And while I'm here, I'll go around the lugs and just buff them out a little bit in the places that are hard to get when you've got the heads on and all the hardware. And you could spend hours on that, on polishing if you want to, but I'm just going to give it a quick once over here. Alright. Next thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and set the head on here. Everybody has their own preference on the labels. oftentimes I put them with where the label is on the drum, which I can actually feel is right back here on this one. It doesn't really matter, but if you put it where the label is, it kind of helps you with the orientation. All sounds the same. Last thing I'll do before I put this back together is give a good wipe down on this rim. Make sure to get any dust or dirt or anything else off of this thing, especially underneath where it makes contact. We don't want any unintentional vibrating or anything like that. Again, also a good chance just to kind of clean things up a little bit. Get some of the dust and spills off. Alright, something like that. I'm going to go ahead and put this back on. Always start these lug bolts with your fingers. Make sure they're lined up straight before putting any tension on it. Now typically, if I'm just doing one head, I'll tighten those all down by hand. But since I've got a lot of heads I'm doing right now, I'm actually using this just to get them all tightened up a little bit faster. I'll tend to kind of go across. This I'm not going to snug down yet. I'm just going to get it most of the way down. Except for that one. Alright, so now that they're all on, I'll just go down kind of underneath here and I'll tighten them all finger tight. That way I know they're pretty even across the board. Alright. Something like that. Next I'll go ahead and move on to a drum key. And I'll just start at one spot, kind of pay attention to where you are, give it about, half turn or so until it's snug. I move to the next one, and then go across, move to the next one, go across, move to the next one, go across, that kind of pattern. After that, I'll press down a little bit and just kind of snug some of them up, make sure they're all feeling about the same. It's a little bit of a hard technique to demonstrate, but if you press in several times about the same pressure each time as you tighten the lug, you'll find that they all tighten up about the same. And just give it gentle pressure. Every time you push down and let up, the lug will move a little bit. So after you've done that a lot, you do it pretty fast. Again, there's a lot of ways to tune up your drum. So this is one way that I've worked on over the years. It seems to work pretty well. So things are fairly evenly snugged up around the drum now. Starting to get a little bit of tone to it. So I'm going to go ahead and over tighten it to kind of stretch it out a little bit, and then bring it down, over tighten it again, bring it down again. To make sure that this head seats in pretty well. I don't have too many problems with Remo heads with glue pulling out or overstretching, anything like that. But you can hear as you start to tighten it up, you get that glue cracking a little bit. So that's pretty normal. These heads are pretty tough if they're seated well. You can put, I don't stand on the drum, but I'll put my foot on it to bend the pitch of it. I'll put a pretty good amount of pressure on it, probably 40 or 50 pounds of pressure. And I don't have hardware fail or the heads ever break. So, okay, this guy's getting pretty high for how I'm going to tune it. I'm going to play this drum fairly low. For this kit, I've only got 3 drums, so 2 toms and a snare. And I like this one pretty low. So I'll push around a little bit. Make sure it feels pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and loosen it back down some. Tay maple custom kit. Actually, this tom and my other tom, which is back here, are the only two Tay drums right now for this setup. But I have a Gretsch bass drum and a Mapex Saturn Series snare drum with this kit. So, but anyway, these drums hold their tuning really well, and they love to be tuned down low. Nice warm, fat tone from them. So I'm just going up again. I'm gonna go over where it's gonna be. Make sure things are sitting well. It seems like it's seated up pretty well with this head. Okay, I'll go ahead and bring it back down one more time, and then I will tune it up. This is maybe a little bit overkill. Another way you can do this is to go ahead and just tune it up and play it a little bit for a couple days, get some hours on it, and then retune it. But usually if I do this, then I don't have to mess with it too much. I'll get it tuned up and it'll be right where I want it for a while. And then I'll tune it again right before our session in a few weeks. So I'm going to bring this down to just where it's got a little bit of tone first. And right now I'm going off of the tension on the lugs to make sure they all feel about the same. That'll be kind of my starting point. So I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the key. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to tune it up just a little bit from that, and then we'll do a little bit of fine tuning. So I'm going about a quarter turn or less on these right now. How the tension is. So it might be a little hard at first to kind of feel that tension, but after you've done it for a while, you can feel pretty well like how tense each one is, and you want to get them to be about the same. The only time that's a problem is if you have dirty or rusty lugs and they're just hard to turn the whole time. So one thing that helps are these plastic washers that are under here. They give a nice smooth feel for the turning. They also help lock it in place a little bit. So now that I've got this kind of roughed up, I'll go ahead and I'm going to turn my music down so I can hear these pretty well. So we're hearing some differences already. So I'll rest my finger lightly in the middle to cut the frequency in half. So when I'm tapping here, I'm mostly getting this sound from here to here, and I'm not getting the whole sound all the way across the drum and hearing that other lug. So it works pretty well on a smaller drum to just rest your hand on the rim and lightly tap it. This one's a little bit too big, so I just try to be conscious to not put any pressure, because that'll change the pitch. So just lightly rest it to cut the wave, tap, but always use one as your reference. Come back to that every time. Boom. Okay, and when I feel like it's pretty close, then I'll kind of tap around. Make little adjustments. One other way like to reference those. Each lug is from the center. Make sure they're all pretty close. I'm not going to worry about it being perfect right now because this head is going to wear in and break in a little bit. I'm going to make some minor adjustments as we go. As long as I get a pretty close sound. Okay, so I've got something pretty close there. I'm running some drum dots right now, so I'll just put one back here, cut out a little bit of the overtones, warm it up a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go with that for now. I'll make a little bit of adjustment over time. I'll probably retune the bottom head just a little bit to reflect this new pitch that I've got going here. But that's about it. The tuning is up to you. You know, if you want to tune up high, if you want to tune it up low, you can tune it lower than that for recording with a close mic. Just get most of the wrinkles out, but you can get it down pretty low. You can also get it up pretty high. For jazz tuning, I might tune the top head up a little above the bottom head. Get a little more of that fundamental tone. For most other tuning and most of the stuff I'm playing right now, I'm going to tune this a little bit lower and the bottom head a little higher, so I get that pitch bend sound. I just personally like that sound quite a bit, so it doesn't get in the way of the music too much for the most part. All right, hit me down in the comments below if you've got any questions or comments. Good luck.